So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? I enjoyed the storyline. I liked the characters, the politics, and the romance. But I wouldn't recommend it, not because it's a bad book, but because I wasn't a fan of the writing style. There are a lot of other romanticises that I would recommend first. Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell, and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our Panic at the Book Club book of the week, which is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message. As an assassin for the rebellions, it's Rafe's job to complete orders and never get caught. But when a rival bounty hunter shatters her world, she finds herself captured by a guild of nobles, a group of powerful fae. Crushed by the loss of his great love, Dragon Rider Khan took the head of the king and donned his melted crown. Now on a tireless quest to quell the never-ebbing, aching feeling in his chest, clues take him to the capital's high-security prison, where he stumbles upon an imprisoned Rave. Together they seek truths that threaten to unravel everything they know about their world and each other. First, this is the spoiler-free part, where we'll discuss any spoiler-free points before moving on to a clearly marked section of the video, which will contain spoilers and more specifics about the book. I feel like this is another one of those situations where I have next to nothing to say about this book, yet I have tons to say about it at the same time. As usual, starting with those chapter lengths, they were fine. I mean, they varied massively, some being a little bit on the long side and some of them being really, really short. Honestly, they varied massively, anywhere between a quick 1-minute read and more like a half an hour read, and I think that the writing style played a huge role in that. I think it's also worth noting that I did start off by reading the physical book first, and then I very quickly switched to the audiobook. It felt like it was taking forever for me to read chapters because I was trying to take in so much information that was thrown at me right at the beginning. I also wasn't a huge fan of the writing style either. I mean, it was very poetic and beautiful at times. However, it also kind of felt like it was too much and it was a little pretentious. And switching to the audiobook did definitely help. I mean, I did know that this week I wouldn't have had tons of time to just sit and read, and with only 4 days to read it in, I just really needed to get through it. The book also had a glossary, which I both love and hate. I mean, I think they're great to refer back to and jog a memory or help you wrap your head around things, but in all honesty, I'm not going to go read the whole thing, and I'm not really going to want to go and have a look in it while I'm reading the book. I do think that more books, especially fantasy, should have a glossary as a normal thing. I just don't feel like it should be absolutely necessary in order to get information across effectively. I will say that reading the audiobook I did miss out a little because the book does have some really stunning illustrations. Also, I wasn't a huge fan of the main narrator, and I think that with audiobooks, it's super important that you like the narrator. I think that it can make or break your experience, and for me, this one sounded really robotic, especially in the beginning. It just sounded really fake and too put on for me. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as having Siri read the book out to me, but I just didn't like it. Also, I swear at one point she tried to cover up a yawn while she was reading it out. In the beginning, there was an awful lot of information, and I do feel like I probably missed half of it because I just struggle to pay attention to that sort of writing style, which is just one reason as to why I don't tend to read more serious fantasy. I do understand why some people might not like books like Fourth Wing and might not consider it to be very serious fantasy. And trust me, a part of me hates that I love it so much as well. But I just don't want reading to feel like so much effort. I don't like getting too much information, just in the same sense that I don't like getting too little information. I mean, I like being led, but I also like to be able to picture things for myself and use my own imagination a little bit. But if you're going to say a whole lot of words in order to say very little, then I'm just going to shut off, and that's what it was like in the beginning of this book. And I will keep stressing that it was in the beginning of the book because it kind of got to a certain point where the writing felt totally different. Like, it just felt a lot more romantic-y focused and less pretentious. Like, it didn't just waffle on. I started to get more invested and I began to really enjoy it, minus a chapter or two because I didn't really care for the multiple POVs. I mean, for me, it could have just stayed with Khan and Riv. And then nearing towards the end, it seemed to remember that, oh yeah, we're not just a romance and we do actually have a storyline. And then it rushed an ending that wasn't all that surprising. Like, there were definitely elements about the ending that I did enjoy and that I'm really intrigued by, but I also just feel like not all that much happened. I guess I'm not really sure if that's because I was struggling to pay attention again, or if in fact not all that much happened. I really did like the story. I mean, some of the tropes might not be my favourite, but overall I really liked the concept, and I'm sure a lot more will be revealed in the next one. And while I liked the story, I didn't really like the book. For the most part, the writing style wasn't for me. I did consider DNFing it, and then I started to enjoy the middle bit. But then I just feel like I missed half of what was going on. I do hate it when I don't enjoy a book, and this is no comment to the author's writing because she's obviously very talented. The writing, as I said, was really beautiful and poetic. It's just a style that I don't get on with. If I had to compare this to any other book, I'm not really sure what I would choose because I've seen people compare it to stuff like Fourth Wing, but I think that's just because of the dragons, and I guess it does have a very similar spice level. It also kind of reminds me of the Flesh and Fire series, but again, the writing style is totally different. Now we've reached that part of the video where I suggest if you haven't read this book yet, go do that first, because beyond this point there will definitely be spoilers. Maybe I missed something, but what the hell happened to the rebellion? Are they just no longer relevant? Like, they just seemed like a really big plot in the beginning, and then they weren't really mentioned again. Like, I do get that they believe Rave to be dead, but they only really seemed to be in it to explain what Rave had been doing for the X amount of cycles or phases or whatever, and as a way to get her sent to prison. Like, I was just expecting them to be a much bigger part than they were. But to be honest, up until after that point, I was barely able to pay attention to it, and I feel a little bad about that because Essie's death really should have been a bigger deal for me. And then she was kind of Khan's prisoner, and after running off, she was abducted by some random folk, and I guess fate. And as random as fuck as that seemed, it was actually really entertaining. It was kind of at that point that I actually started to enjoy the book. Before that, it was very close to being a DNF. It was really weird because it was at that point that it kind of felt like the writing style took a shift, almost like it was written by two completely different people. I liked the ending-ish. I mean, it didn't feel like all that much happened. It felt rushed, and I'd call it anticlimactic, but it just felt like there wasn't a build to begin with. Some information was revealed, and that was it, and most of which wasn't even all that surprising. And by far the most interesting part of the ending was that I assume the other is Slantra, or their consciousness, I guess. That's probably what would make me want to read the next one. I did like Khan and Rave's relationship. I mean, I don't mind a memory loss trope, but I'm not a very big fan of a pregnancy trope. But considering that the child is now, like, essentially over 100 years old, I think that's fine. So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? This is what I feel when I say that I have tons to say about the book, but nothing at the same time. I enjoyed the storyline. I liked the characters, the politics, and the romance. And despite the writing style, I don't think there were tons and tons of world building. So even though I liked the storyline, I didn't like the book. So I wouldn't recommend it, not because it's a bad book, but because I wasn't a fan of the writing style. There are a lot of other romanticises that I would recommend first. And will I be reading any more by Sarah A. Parker? I'm honestly not sure. I don't think I enjoyed it enough to go and read the next one when that comes out, but there are certain aspects that I am really curious about, so I'll never say never. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book? Next week we're discussing One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, so don't forget to get your comments and thoughts in by Monday the 9th of September at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok or Instagram. The following week will be Hooked by Emily McIntire, but don't forget if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below, along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you, and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's always appreciated, and I will see you next week. Bye.